All right, we're live. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody to the second workshop, the fourth part of our multi-tenancy march. We're here with Siam, and we're going to be learning about, I think it's on the screen, ephemeral pull request environment using vCluster. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Siam so we can get started because we got a lot to cover. And then, like, if you have questions or anything like that, save them to the end or post them in chat, and I'll try to answer them as Siam's going. But here's Siam, our principal developer advocate. Welcome,
Awesome.
Siam.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. And hello, everyone. I hope you all are enjoying the multi-tenancy March Superstream series that has gone from scratch, explaining the why of multi-tenancy, the big why, the whole spectrum of multi-tenancy landscape, where vCluster kind of fits in perfectly into that landscape, and then how and what vCluster actually is, moving on to shared platform stack and see how vCluster has been, vCluster can be used for that. And now today we'll be discussing another kind of workshop for you that I prepared is the ephemeral pull request environments using vCluster. This is use case talk. This is something that is a very genuine use case, genuine problem, and every developer kind of struggles with it, and you can see the frustration. So whenever there's a code, like you write some piece of code, piece of software, there's a Git repository or GitLab or whatever that is. I mean, the source code is sitting somewhere, and then you need to change it. You need to add that beautiful feature, or you need to fix an issue, and then there is this small PR that you raise against that particular GitHub repository. Now the question is, how do you test that small change? You need a pull request, like you need a whole environment to test the pull request, and also you need certain CRTs, you need custom resources, you need pre-built stuff which is there. So how do you do that? And for developers, it's a pain. The reason for that is every time they need to go to the platform team, they need to request a Kubernetes cluster, they need to then deploy the whole application, including their changes, and then they are able to see for their pull request if the issue is fixed, if it's working perfectly. And yeah, the developer just wants to test, doesn't want to go into the rabbit hole of doing things, asking folks, asking the ops team or the platform engineer or DevOps engineer, whatever the fancy word people are calling them these days. But yeah, the people who are handing off the Kubernetes clusters, that, hey, please give me the cluster, raises the request, takes eternity to get that Kubernetes cluster, and then go for their testing. So yeah, the problem is clear. Organizations, what they're doing is one cluster every PR, one cluster for every developer, that, hey, take this cluster and do whatever the stuff you need and spin it off when you don't need, or one cluster per environment. So hundreds of unnecessary clusters, obviously too much of cost. Why this is like, why can't we have a new cluster per tenant? Why it's such a big problem? Obviously cost is one, time consumption. Like, it's creating a full-blown GK cluster, EKS cluster takes time, and you need time to spin that up, and there's a process in place. Not every company is a startup. So there are enterprises, and for the enterprises, you need to go through a process to procure a Kubernetes cluster. Like, you go through the process of procuring your laptop or whatever that is. So there's a whole process. You raise a request, raise a ticket, whatever that is, and then you get a Kubernetes cluster. So the overall time adds up, and it's a small change. Remember, it's a small change. That's the level of frustration that we are seeing right now. So we need to solve this. We need to make stuff happy. Resource intensive, obviously, you are unnecessarily pulling off resources, the big Kubernetes cluster that you don't need actually to test a small change. Action time provisions such as deployment, cluster warm-up, and resource allocation takes up significant time in the whole pipeline. So your CI pipeline keeps on running forever. So choices, maybe you have obviously separate clusters, long wait times, duplicated tools, nightmare to manage the large fleet of clusters, right? Hey, you deleted my Kubernetes cluster, I still needed it. Ops said, no, well, costing. So high cost for each cluster. Maybe you have written some fancy CI pipelines and you have provided your kube config as a secret. And then for every PR, you have a mechanism of having a new namespace for each PR. But here also, infra owners become the bottleneck, and noisy neighbor problems, like one thing goes wrong, another thing can goes wrong, resource utilization, resource consumption, fair resource of consumption, permission for the CRDs. Maybe you want to test a Kubernetes operator itself. Maybe you want to deploy a new version of Kubernetes operator. What would you do? You will break the entire cluster because it's a cluster-wide resource. So it's tough, it's difficult, and it's not feasible, to be honest. And now, what can we do? Yeah, that's cool. vCluster comes to rescue. So when we talk about the multi-tenancy, and in this specific case, we are actually not talking about multi-tenancy. We are talking about a use case that our trusted developer is facing. It's not a multi-tenant issue. It's basically a simple issue. How do I get a Kubernetes cluster where I can test the changes? I can test my small change which is happening. So you probably have seen this architecture diagram, this vCluster. I won't spend much time on this. We already are about 6-7 minutes in. I just want to go into the demo because the workshop is important. You need to know how things work, how the developer will be happy. So let's move on. After taking a sip of water, obviously, that's important. Solution. So today we'll try to make the developer happy, and we'll do exactly the solution to the problem that I just mentioned. And there is a user. I mean, there are multiple users, and let's say a user, let me put my cursor in. Yeah. So there's this user, and the user raises a pull request for a particular repository, a change. Then they add a label. Now we have a fancy GitHub action that gets triggered on the addition of that label, that builds the application with the latest changes, does the build and push, and also updates the relevant manifest files for that deployment, like for deploying it onto the cluster, and creates a virtual cluster using vCluster, deploy the new set of applications to the virtual cluster, exposes it as the ingress so that the developer is happy with the latest changes that the developer has pushed into the GitHub repository. And then once it's merged or the label is removed, the weak cluster is automatically gone, deleted, and the branch is also gone. So that's the template. And for most cases, it should work as it is, to be honest. This is the demo repository. You can scan the QR code. I'll come back to this QR code later as well. And this is the link. So yeah, we are not saying bye yet. We're just starting out, right? So that's the workshop. I'll just put the link to Mike, and he can share that in the comments and different places. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my second monitor because I'm not able to see any comment and stuff, which is fine. All right. So ephemeral PR environments using vCluster. Let's kind of do it. So this is the repository. It has the application. The application is, you have a simple main.go that is just handling from the static, like getting the static HTML, like the templates index.html file, and showcasing that a simple HTTP that it's doing. And then when you go to templates, you will see it has the index.html file. So let's say a developer creates a branch demo from the main branch or from their own GitHub account. So now we are in the demo branch, and join the vCluster multi-tenancy workshop part 2 and learn hands-on with Loft Labs. So I changed that. Commit the changes. All right. Yeah, we can actually, yeah, let's raise the PR as well. In the meanwhile, yeah, static has the style.css, just the basic CSS which is there, and then you have the code.yaml file which says the builds and the Docker file from Golang and stuff. Pretty basic stuff. And now if you go to the root, now here are the interesting parts. So app, now is the deploy. Deploy has the deployment.yaml file that has the deployment, that has the service, that has the ingress. And now you might be wondering, its specific ingress, what will happen? Now for that, there is a thing which I have created called a Jinja template. So if you go to the TMPL section and you go, in the meanwhile, now I can actually create the PR compare and create pull request, because the vCluster process and stuff will take time. Create pull request. As I mentioned, I'll create a pull request. There is a label, add the label test. As soon as I add the label test, there will be a workflow that gets triggered. So which we'll be able to see here just in a second. Yeah, this particular thing. So we'll go to the workflow a bit later, but yeah, this is the Jinja template. There are two things which we have kept as the variables in the template. One is the image deploy tag, and one is the ingress. So these two things are something which we have taken as variables. Now let's come to the workflows. Right now, this particular workflow is running, and in next repository, like the next tab, I can actually go to the actions and I can check that particular action, what it is doing. Obviously, build and deploy, pull request type labeled. If the GitHub event label name is test, then you start this particular build and check out the code, set up Go, set up Go mod tidy and all that stuff. Set up Go, log into the GHCR because I want to push the packages to the GitHub registry itself. So we are not using Docker Hub, and there's one less secret that we have to add. This works. Build and push the image. So co build, giving the image tag, and the image tag is the SHA. So it's a SHA, and parsing the reverse head of the like the head of the commit and stuff. So it gives a unique identifier over there that you can put in the image tag, which is cool. This is important because now we are using the Jinja action, and we are saying with the template this, the output file should be the deployment.yaml file that I showed you the first time. So in this, the variables. So there were two variables. Now it's time to replace them. One is the image deploy tag, which we want to do with env.image deploy tag, and one is the ingress tag. Here we want to use the github.event.pull request number.vcluster.tech. So we are mapping the ingress with the pull request version. So pr.vcluster.tech. Now pushing the deployment to the branch here, but what we are doing is we are creating a new branch, a new feature branch, and in that particular branch we are actually creating this, pushing this deployment.yaml file. Now installing the vCluster CLI. So we have the actions, loft, setup vCluster. Here you need to give two things, the platform URL and the access key. This is the platform. For me, the URL. Yeah, by the way, vCluster 024 just went out. We have a new video, new awesome feature, snapshot restore. Check that out. Yeah, the latest PR10 is already ready, I think, with the latest changes. But yeah, so you can either use your own platform or vCluster.cloud. I'm using vCluster Cloud. You can go to settings, access keys, and you can create an access key like this, and you need to put that as part of the GitHub Actions secret, both of them, vCluster platform URL and the vCluster access key. Once this is done, it uses the create vCluster action, and it names it with PR and uses that number. And also the ingress link, which should be there. This is just the parameter over here. Now deploying the application to the virtual cluster. and then testing out the application. So let's go to build and deploy. The build and deploy is successful, so everything is working fine. Demo codes are with me till now. And let's see the create a vCluster. Yeah, this is fine, but the test application, sorry. Yeah, test application. And this is the one. Awesome. So we changed Loft Labs, and that's the change. So basically, the change that the developer did is actually deployed, and it just took the time when I was just explaining you the simple code which is there. By that time, there was a new vCluster. There was the things, the new changes of the application. The build happened, and the deployments and all that thing updated, and it is deployed already for the developer to check out what is happening, whether the issue is fixed and all that stuff. Now once it's kind of done, so obviously it's a thing where you merge it. So you can say looks um, LGTB is fine, LGTM is fine, but you can just do the merge. As soon as it's merged, there should be another action that should get triggered, which is the second one, the cleanup action. So if the PR is closed, merged, or it's unlabeled, this particular action gets triggered. It check out the branch, the feature branch, which is there, and then it deletes the feature branch and again sets up the vCluster CLI and delete. So that's the simple command: vCluster platform delete, vCluster name. That's it. So if we see here, if we see here, I could have actually shown you now. The cluster would have gone. vCluster list. What baby terminating? Yeah, it's already gone. So unfortunately, we are not able to see that cluster. It's gone so fast. So PR10, if I just click, obviously 404 found. And let's see if we have in the actions. Yeah, it's successful already. So yeah, you can see the feature branch that was created has also been cleaned up. So there's a new feature branch that gets created when there is something that needs to be deployed, and whenever there's a change basically, and the label test is added, and as soon as you merge it, the feature branch also gets deleted. So that's the whole workflow of how these things work. Now, interesting things is that this is available in this format. What you need a Kubernetes cluster. You need to deploy ingress controller over there, and then you need to set up a record for your application. Right now, for example, my external IP is this. I've set the record of my external IP onto the domain, and then you need to do the platform login into that, and you can use any of the templates, and this is the flow that will happen. Now, interestingly, if you see, there is something which is called templates. So you can have a virtual cluster added template. You can use that particular virtual cluster template when you are creating the vCluster. So you can pass on the template when you are creating the virtual cluster, which is good, because now you can have a pre-built template with pre-defined set of stuff that should come up when this vCluster is created. And another thing that you can do is as soon as it is deployed, so let's say there is Argo CD, like if you truly want to automate everything, like the true GitOps kind of thing, you have Argo CD deployed onto your cluster, which is looking at this particular deployment file. So as soon as there is a change in this particular deployment file, Argo CD will fetch the new changes and apply that new changes onto the cluster which is there. So whenever there is a new PR, the whole process, this particular workflow happens, and the request is merged. Now, when the request is merged, it means that deploy is changed. As soon as it's changed, the Argo CD is watching that, and it automatically updates the application. So I think that gives you the complete workflow, the GitOps workflow on how you can kind of create, deploy, and do the GitHubs around it and stuff. And these are the packages, obviously, which are there. The GitHub pages is for just giving you a neater view of workshop so that you can try it out yourself. It has all the files, the explanation, and you should be able to try it out on your own. So yeah, that's pretty much it from the workshop point of view. I hope you enjoyed the workshop. Well, I was quick enough because there were no issues, and since there are no issues, which is good because everything worked and it should work. Yeah, that's an interesting use case. I have been hearing this use case a lot about ephemeral PR environments, and if you search on Google, you will find a lot of blogs, discussion points, how you do that. I think vCluster fits very well because it's just a container starting up. When you create a vCluster create demo, and it starts up a stateful set, so it just takes up the time of starting up a container after pulling the minimal images, which is easy. And the developer, now this developer should be happy ideally. I don't have the happy face of the same developer because I did ask ChatGPT to kind of create it. But yeah, now for a small change, they can test a PR. They don't need to depend on the platform team. They don't need to do the whole process workflow of requesting a Kubernetes cluster. They can just test this out, which is cool.
All right, so we had some questions. One of the questions we had was, how comparable is this with Heroku review apps? I kind of answered it in the YouTube, but I think more so it's like because it's deploying to like a Kubernetes cluster, and you can deploy more than just like your application. You can install CRDs and add additional things if you want to be able to test your application with like what your stack
Again, I
routes
think
would look like.
Yeah, again, I think the real power comes with the flexibility. Heroku, how much you can customize, that's limited in that aspect. But here you have the ability to customize. You can add your virtual cluster templates. You can add policies. You can add like there can be someone nasty coming in with some bad stuff that they want to do. So there should be policies in place that you can apply cluster-wide policies. You can have Kyverno for the cluster-wide policies applied to all Kubernetes clusters, all the virtual clusters that will be spinning up, like not pulling from a specific repository, not doing this, not doing that. And then you can have runtime security so that you do not do any other troublesome actions. So both of these and a lot of customization, the CRDs is something that you will be having all these things.
Yeah, that's the thing you're saying. Like the question to follow up is, the hope is that it covers the intent of what Heroku brings, but allows us to do more and provide flexibility and opportunity to move to other providers. Yeah, exactly. If you run this in any cloud, right? Like any Kubernetes cluster anywhere, you can decide you can do this on-prem, right? Like if you don't want your application, your preview environments to be out like publicly accessible. So kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah. So this particular thing is, so this is just one use case. So today's workshop, I want to highlight like vCluster can be used for many use cases. This is one specific use case where vCluster fits in very well, especially when you're deploying your applications to Kubernetes clusters and you need Kubernetes clusters for all your actions and faster clusters, and you need less resources, bring the cost down, have more customization, go into the templated way, apply GitOps. So all those flexibilities that comes with Kubernetes itself, because Kubernetes is popular because of its flexibility. Because you see, when you create a cluster, you install Argo CD, you install Prometheus, which are external, which are the operators, which are something which is built outside of Kubernetes, and you install them. So that's the level of flexibility that it provides, keeping everything simple and neat. Like you don't need to change the architecture drastically. You don't need to change your application drastically. You just need to have vCluster integrated, and some templates to, if you want to update everything automated, like up here we use the Jinja template to automatically update the manifest to be deployed with the latest version of the application with the changes that the developer raised the pull request against as well.
Yeah, the assumption I think here is that you're using Kubernetes for everything, but I mean I guess there's a use case too where maybe your developers aren't using Kubernetes and you're just helping them by giving them preview environments because the platform team's using Kubernetes. Right? But that's the assumption is after this is you're doing what you said is like you're going to deploy with Argo. Right? Like you're going to take that change and you're going to deploy it after you've already tested it. All right, another question. Not really sure on this one. This ephemeral environment functionality is provided by the control planes operator. Are there any plans for pulling that project into Flux proper? I think it's more. I'll let you. Yes, I am. I think he's talking about the the actual endpoint for like vCluster platform and then deploying it, but I'm not sure.
So this, I don't know which part it is, like ephemeral functionality is provided by the control planes operator. No, this functionality is, so it's basically how it is all glued up. So there is an action that builds your application. That is something very common thing, and which is off anything. So this is standard. Now you have everything in place. You just need a place to deploy. Now where you are deploying is, you have given a few things. For example, I can show you in the settings. If I go to the actions, sorry, secrets actions, and there are some secrets, like you have the vCluster access key and the vCluster platform URL. So the action logs in, the action knows, because there are some templates and there are some integrations which will be pro only, and you will be able to then use that as templates. So once that is done, the vCluster is created. Once the vCluster is created, this way, yeah, the vCluster is created. Now it's just a simple kubectl apply of app service ingress, and ingress obviously is there. You can check against that and you can access that. So there is no operator which is kind of doing anything over here right now. The only operator that would be getting used is the GitOps, which is outside, which is watching a particular repository of this GitHub repo. If anything goes into the main branch, then that Argo CD or Flux, they kind of gets the latest changes and deployed to the Kubernetes cluster.
So update. Yeah, still a good question here, because it kind of makes us re-explain it. Yeah, the vCluster platform is providing an API that you're interacting with to deploy a virtual cluster on an actual Kubernetes cluster. So yeah, this are the mixed up projects. Okay, so let's see, another question. Would you consider Argo CD pull request generator a good pattern compared to this too, or a better pattern? I'm not sure.
I don't know which pull request generator.
Is this the question right after? Different use case.
Again, that I don't know that Argo CD. Yeah, maybe Argo CD pull request generator can do some stuff, but it won't be able to create the virtual cluster unless you have something which is there. Like you need,
so that's just avoiding the GitHub action, right? Like, so that would just be,
yeah,
instead of the GitHub action, we use Argo CD pull request generator, which you could, right? Because you could deploy a virtual cluster with Argo CD, but that'd be a completely different configuration that we just showed off from the
different
workshop.
configuration, and
but it could take the place of GitHub actions, like if you don't want to use those. Like if you want to do everything internal and stuff like that, yeah, probably. I would say better. I would say it's if you're using Argo CD and you're used to using the pull request generator, then maybe, right? But if you're using Flux or something like that, then that's not really an option, and you want to use like something like this instead, or whatever Flux has built in. All right, so we have another question. How much is vCluster different from a kind cluster? There you go, Sam. I'll give you that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's so basically kind is just for your local testing. vCluster is something which is used in production. It is used for ephemeral environments, testing environments, dev environments, used in production for multi-tenancy, reduction of cost. So if you watch our last 3 webinars, you'll be getting a good understanding of why we use kind of vCluster. Kind cluster is not something that you will be able to use in production, and you can't deploy kind cluster on an EKS cluster. Like, it's not Kubernetes in Kubernetes kind of thing. But vCluster is basically the virtualization layer within the Kubernetes cluster. So with every vCluster, yeah, that's bad, right? I don't have any vCluster, so let's do that. vCluster create demo. So now, right now, it is creating a virtual cluster. So what will happen once it's created? It is creating a stateful set. That stateful set is having its own control plane components. So the control plane components gives you the look, feel, and everything of a real Kubernetes cluster. So when you give the kubeconfig file of this particular virtual cluster to anybody in your team, they won't know if it's a virtual cluster or a vCluster. You can't do any of these things with the kind cluster. Kind cluster is just basically a Kubernetes in Docker that lets you run Kubernetes and test out some stuff locally that you want, but overall production ready stuff you won't be able to do that.
Nice thing too is you can actually have ingress, and you can actually access these publicly if you wanted to, if you're using like EKS or something like that. So like that's the difference too, is you're not running it locally, you're running it in the cloud, or you're running it on prem, and you have way more resources to be able to test and run stuff in your kind of pretending like you're using a real Kubernetes cluster. I mean, kind of does that too, but also with ingress and all these other things that you can have and install, right? Like you can share CRDs up from the base cluster and not have to install any of that in kind, and then just create your ingress resource like you would if you were creating it on a regular cluster, like in production. So it's a little bit better in that way. I would say a lot better, but
yeah. So if you see this particular cluster that got created, the virtual cluster, if I give it to anyone, it's just single pod, which is the DNS pod. Nothing else running apart from this. This is for the networking and stuff. And if you see kubectl, let me go back. Kubectl config use context kubectl get ns, and if I do this vCluster demo, so kubectl get pods hyphen n. Now you see that there's a stateful set which gets kind of created in the host cluster. So now I'm connected to the host cluster. So kubectl describe pod hyphen n vCluster demo, and you'll be able to see that it has its own controller manager API server as part of the stateful set.
So, yeah, the Rio was mentioning something about Flex. Yeah, Rio, like thanks for that clarification. Basically, yeah, you could do this in other ways. If you've already got stuff set up and you're using other things to pull PRs and then build those environments. This is just one of the ways, right? Like, so we're kind of documenting how to do this with GitHub Actions because it's easier to demo, right? Because we don't have to have, you know, Flux and Argo and everything all deployed and then show that off. But also we can start showing off how to do it with Argo, pull request generators, and then maybe even looking like the Flux stuff. I think most of our stuff is Argo based, but you can still use Flux with it, like you're talking about. We just don't have a lot of we don't have a lot of guides on that yet. That's something that should be coming, though, I'm sure.
Yeah, I have a demo repository of Flux, but
okay.
I need to share that up, and I need to create a workshop like this out of that so that you can follow step by step. So cool. I can build up something similar like this with Argo CD and then also with Flux, so that you have basically the GitOps with Flux and GitOps with Argo CD using vCluster. I can build up something on that. So noted. Point taken.
All right, and then so we have a GitHub repository that's associated with a lot of videos and stuff that we're making, like a lot of the intro and how to get started and how to set up and configure things, which I'll put that link in there in a second too.
And also this, Mike, the Loft Labs experiments.
All right, let me put that in there too. Yeah, so I think are we moving over to that? Maybe we're moving over to that. I think that's kind of newer. Maybe I'll start putting all of my stuff in a new place instead of examples. Okay, cool. Okay, so we do have a demo. All right, so for Amy, what kind of demo are you looking for Argo CD? Like we do have some demo stuff with Argo CD and how to configure it. Like within the enterprise product too, there is an Argo CD integration that'll automatically add like your cluster to Argo CD. It'll let you do SSO so you can get into Argo CD from vCluster and stuff too. But are you talking about like do you want to see the deployment side after we've done the PR and the merge? What kind of demos are you looking for Argo CD? Because we're here to make the videos and we're here to make the content. We just got to know what people are having difficulty with and what they want to actually see.
Exactly.
But yeah, we have some Argo stuff. Let me all right, hold on, there's another question. Let me link, if you want to read the question from Rio, Sam, I'll see if I can link the YouTube channel too real quick.
And also these, I'll add that to the chat. So this is the Argo CD one, the docs.
All right, got those added in. All right, so I've got added in. I mean, if you're in YouTube, you're gonna see it again. You already know the channel is, but there's a list for our channel, and then there's a playlist about vCluster stuff that has some of the getting started and what you would do like day one, and then like how do I set up ingress? How do I set up a couple of these other things? And I think there's Argo CD demo in there. Like you can use, Argo CD to deploy clusters. You can use Terraform to deploy clusters. You can use a lot of things you're already using to deploy these clusters. We're just kind of showing our opinionated way real quick we're going to use the vCluster CLI to do most of it. And then we're also going to use like the GitHub Actions. So we're kind of showing just a single use case of what you can do while there's a lot of other ones out there. All right, let me see what Rio says.
And the latest release has a few contributors, including me, new one.
You see, Rio said that they had during one workshop, they had 140 clusters running on their laptop, giving people access. I wonder how much memory did you have on that, right? Like that's going to be a lot of virtual clusters running. That's awesome. Yeah, so you could run, like if you're running K3S on your you know, if you've got VMs or something like that on your local machine, you're running K3s or something like that, you can just deploy virtual clusters into it. You can do it on, like I've got K3s running on 3 nodes down in my basement. I'm running it there. So you can do all this on-prem. Framework, yeah. The new Framework desktop, I've been looking at that too after they showed that off. It looks so cool. But I'm waiting until it comes out to see if I want to order one. I got Studio and stuff. Well, I don't know. You saw that, Sam. I think I linked it to you. Like Framework's putting out like new laptops, and then they've got like a new desktop that's going to compete for like on in your house AI. All right, and then I'll show the webinar series too in a second if you want. Do you want me to steal your screen? We can just I'll show the outro stuff, and then we can just answer more questions if anyone has it. All right, cool. Let me share this.
Yep.
More free form now because we finished the demo and now we're just answering your questions. Thank you so much for the interaction though too, because it's super helpful to be able to answer questions and talk with people instead of just make stuff.
Yeah, so this is what makes a demo, live stream, whatever that is fun, that there are people who wants to who have their own stuff. Like Rio shared a very interesting Argo CD plus vCluster demo, and then you know, there are Q&A conversation going on, which is cool. Yeah, go on, Mike.
Let me make sure it's actually shares, because last time I did this for some reason it was not showing. Everybody can see the actual webinar series. Yes. Last time it was just me and Siams. Okay, cool. We can see it. I'm making sure that they can see it, because last time we were just sitting over here and it didn't show up at all. And I'm sitting there talking about like what's coming up and no one can actually see it. So let me check real quick on our channel, and if anyone actually that's watching on the stream can say, yeah, it looks good. Basically, let me look. Take 1 second. Join. Yep, I can see it. Okay, cool. So coming up next week, same time, same place, March 27th, we're going to have Chris Nesbitt-Smith, and we are going to learn about balancing isolation and complexity in a Kubernetes platform. So we have one more session coming up, which is going to be on the 27th, and then following that, we're going to have another workshop. So join us next week for that. You can sign up at the Multi-Tenancy March URL. I'll post it, or you can scan this and get there, or I'll post the URL again when we finish up here in a minute. So you can just go click on that and sign up for the next 2 sessions. Also, all the videos and stuff from the sessions we've done previously are going to be in YouTube. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Raul. Yeah, all the videos that we've done previously are in YouTube or on LinkedIn or on Twitter, depending on where you want to watch them. I recommend YouTube, right? But you can watch them anywhere you need to. I think you can also watch them through StreamYard later too. But if you want to join our Slack community too and ask questions or post like awesome stuff that you've been working on, like, you know, deploying 120 virtual clusters on your laptop for a workshop, join Slack, slack.vcluster.com. If you want to see a demo of the enterprise stuff, you can vcluster.com/enterprise demo, and then our amazing Kurt will walk you through all the cool stuff that you can do beyond what we even showed, right? Because the idea here is it's an API endpoint. You can deploy a virtual cluster with GitHub, but you can also modify all your templates, all your users, all your tenants, and all that stuff, projects. You can set up basically everything, because everything's a CRD within vCluster. You can use GitHub to modify and update and all that stuff and make it basically all GitOps and not have to manage it on your own if you don't want to. But then I'll leave this. Go ahead.
Before you say thank you, 2 more things. One, if you like the vCluster project, please do start it. Stars obviously help. Please go to the GitHub repository and start the project. And second thing is, we are going big at KubeCon. So we'll be there at the Platform Engineering Day, and at KubeCon, we'll be having a booth. I'll be having a talk. Check us out and talk to us, book meetings, and we'll be happy to answer all of your questions about Kubernetes, multi-tenancy, and yeah, Kubernetes in general. So feel free to check us out in London too.
We'll have some swag. So we'll have some cool shirts, and we'll have a bunch of other stuff too.
There will be awesome
stickers.
Swag. Yeah. Yes, awesome swag, awesome stickers. There will be special giveaways, demo giveaways. All of the awesome stuff will be there. So yeah, you should definitely check us out at KubeCon. Yeah, now we can say thank you.
Yeah, we'll hang out for a minute or two. We'll see if any other questions or anything like that. If you have questions, let us know. But yeah, KubeCon, like Sam said, join us there. And then yeah, we haven't been saying as much, but yeah, go start on GitHub, right? Like if you vCluster, go start. That way you can remember where it is and you can use it later if you want to. If you have any issues or something like that you want to open, you'll be able to quickly find it, and you can open an issue. If you want to like contribute or something like that too, you can do that as well. But yeah, thanks everyone. I mean, Siam did all the work. I'm just here answering questions and helping out. So thank you so much, Siam, for the demo. Really enjoyed it. Anything else you want to say before we head out, or we'll see if any other questions kind of come in while you
no, I think we are putting in effort, like Mike said, in creating the content that is helpful, like a use case based content, something that you can go back and use. So I would encourage everyone to kind of go through the workshops. Let us know in the issues, in the comments, in the Slack, on X platform, or anywhere, what all stuff you would want to watch, what is missing, what use cases you are facing issues with that you think vCluster can help. And we'll try to come up with that sort of content that can help you in simplifying stuff with Kubernetes.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of guessing right now. We're like, okay, I think this is a use case that we see pretty often. We see other people like posting about that, so we'll talk about that. But yeah, there might be stuff that we don't even know about, like our new projects. Find a new project at KubeCon that's like super interesting that we're not really aware of or using, and you're trying to integrate it with vCluster. Let us know, because we like to make videos about that too. Like, we want to stay on top of all the new cool stuff. Yeah, and stop by and say hi to Siam if you're there. And
Yep.
I think that's pretty good. But yeah, we'll see you next week. We're gonna do this again. Watch some of the previous sessions if you want to on YouTube or LinkedIn. And then, like I said, we'll see everybody next week. And if you have questions you think about over the next week and you want to ask them, then I'll be there too. And I can answer those questions too at the end. But thanks so much, everybody. Thank you, Siam. Say enjoy your evening, and we'll see everybody next week.